Flying.
I can see the stream output. That looks good to me.
Yeah, it's here we go. I think we're live.
Cool.
Okay, right. Hey, right. Well, that took me by surprise. So, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this live stream. It's a pleasure to welcome Mike Channell, who is co-editor of OutsideXbox, a fellow competitor in the ABB Formula E Race at Home Challenge, and also somebody who's raced in Ginettas, something that I did back in 2018. So we're going to talk about a bit about that later as well. But for now, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mike?
Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Okay. I can't hear you.
Oh gosh, sorry. Let me see if is it looking okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I know what it is. I just sorry, I'm just trying to watch the live stream chat and I turned the volume down on that.
Fair enough.
Real good. Sorry, slight technical hiccup.
That's all right, no worries. These things happen on live. We had a shocking live stream yesterday with loads of technical issues, so I'm feeling you there, definitely.
Oh, thanks. Hey, let's try that again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, cheers.
How's your day going today?
Yeah, not too bad. I've got a bit of time off actually coming up, so it's one of those things where you do twice as much work in the days leading up to going away. So quite a lot of stuff to get through. There's some big Xbox stuff happening later today, which is quite important. So yeah, lots to get through. But once today is over, I can focus entirely on practicing for the Formula E stuff, which is sorely needed. I've not even booted it up this week. I just haven't had time. So I'm going to be a little bit behind the eight ball, as it were.
Wow, bless. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things I'm finding is that I didn't honestly realize coming into this championship how much practice I'd be having to do.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? That sort of level of progress. When we got into that electric docks track, I was just like shocking. It's so bad. I was so far off the pace, and then just over the course of the week, you just find time that you had no idea was there. But I definitely think I sort of tend to hit a kind of plateau after a certain point where I'm like, this is as far as I can get. And obviously there are guys out there who can access, entire seconds worth more time from seemingly from nowhere. So yeah, I've got to keep working. I'm getting I think overall more comfortable with the car and with the sim, I guess, as well, as time goes on. But yeah, some of the guys in the server are so quick, and I think it's reflective of the fact that they are the top level sim racers. Some of the names that in the server we're racing against have been on, World's Fastest Gamer or the McLaren Shadow Project. These big like competitions that whittle down the entire sim racing community into 2 or 3 people. So yeah, it's hard when you're comparing yourself to them, but I'm taking the little victories, like the good battles, or just even just getting, I think electric docks, I was maybe 3.5 seconds off the fastest time. But for me, that's still kind of amazing because the difference in the amount of time these guys have dedicated to and have to dedicate to sim racing is vastly different from the amount of time I've certainly got or the amount of experience I've got.
I think that's it. I mean, I found coming into the electric docks, it was of all the tracks we've raced on so far, I was really struggling because so much of it is flat out. And initially I was driving it and I'm like, well, 80% of the course is flat out. How can I
Where do you find the time?
Far? Yeah, where do you find that time? And then you find that these tiny adjustments that you make, start paying off, but it can take a lot of time. And I found one of the things that really tripped me up is that I start to second guess everything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then you almost get to a point where you deconstruct your entire line and where you're lifting, where you're trying to rotate the car, and you just, I even on Saturday morning, I just found a few things, and
Yeah.
like we've been chatting to each other a bit on, on, and just sort of trying to, I think, spur each other on, which has been nice, because I think it's easy to feel frustrated when you look when you look at the times that those guys are doing.
I think that's what I said to you early doors, is that you really can't, it's not an accurate measure of your like merit as a racing driver. And I think a lot of a lot of people talk about the kind of transferable skills between sim and reality, and obviously they do exist, and people who are quick in sims tend to be quick in real life and vice versa, but it's not quite the same. And I feel like there's a level above kind of just racing ability, where it becomes about being able to exploit the minute differences between the sim and reality and make the most of those. So some of the rotation the guys were getting through the kind of 90-degree right-handers and things in these courses, which is obviously quite a lot of speed at a Formula E course is getting around those kind of 90-degree turns and stuff. Some of the rotation, I just don't know if that's even achievable in real life, but they found those tiny margins that they can take advantage of, and they're doing that for every single corner, every single lap. So I think probably if you got into a real race car and were against some of these sort of top sim racers, you'd probably have an advantage, because you'd know how to interpret the sort of sensations and the data you're getting from your senses essentially better. And probably there's some stuff that you can do in the sim that you can't do in a real car, or wouldn't do because you're not brave enough or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I think, although sims are brilliant these days, and I think they really they do a really good job of replicating the car. They do a really good job of replicating the feeling of racing, the sort of the intensity of it and things like that. But what I would say is that I've realized I'm quite dark. Let me see if this helps. Hey, there you go.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Sorry, I should have just switched that on earlier. Sorry. Yeah, so I think those things are done really well, but I do still think there is a gap there, and that's a gap that can be exploited by the faster guys.
Yeah, I think that element of rotation is really interesting, because I see some of the guys just almost sort of like a kind of rally entry into some of the hairpins, where they're trail breaking it in, but it's like they've already got the car rotated by the point they're kind of level with the apex.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? It doesn't feel like it should work. The only way I got close to that, and I'm sure you, because our times were similar, I'm sure you were trying similar sort of things, but the fast S's. So after obviously there's the turn one chicane, turn two left-hander, then you turn right into these sort of fast S's and stuff. I did find towards the end I was using the momentum of the S's and like the weight shift there to then kind of pitch the car into that left-hander. There's then the two left-handers. And that did feel good and felt quick. And I think that was just me getting a bit of a taste for what the top sort of players are able to do with the car at other areas in the lap, if that makes sense. So
it's interesting, because I reached out to Kevin Siggy, who was, I guess, like my teammate racing with BMW.
Sure.
And I was just like, look, I'm really struggling. Can you give me some pointers? And it's like he was saying, well, you've got to focus on, reducing the amount of steering lock, because obviously you're understeering and you're bleeding off speed, and that will help improve your mid-corner speed. And it's all very well, and obviously, I was like, that makes sense. But then the problem is, I found myself in a position where then you're kind of almost you're not really sending the car into the corner.
Yeah.
And you do have to get those kind of quite you have to kind of grab the car a bit by the scruff of the neck, and rotate it and send it, and then you end up in this position where you're like sort of yinging and yanging between two different and also the car, how do you find the car to drive, because it's quite the characteristics of the Formula E car are quite different. I know a lot of people saying it's a bit like a big go-kart in terms of where you have to drive it.
I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating to drive. It's unlike, I think I said this in one of the official interviews on the broadcast, it's unlike anything I've driven before in reality or in a sim. And I find that unique challenge interesting, and kind of, I'm really enjoying focusing on a single car that feels so different from anything else I've driven, and really trying to extract as much as I can personally out of it. I think it does have that kind of go-kart vibe. I think that's contributed to slightly by the nature of the circuits and the nature of the kind of corners that
Yeah.
you're doing. But yeah, it's fun to drive. I kind of like that it's on treaded tires. It feels different from a sort of wings and slicks thing. But there is, as we've discovered in the electric docks track, when you do get to open it up, there is a lot of speed there, and also a fair amount of downforce as well generated when you start sort of picking up speed. So I found it really, really interesting to drive. I think it's exciting and fun and difficult, challenging on the brakes and challenging managing the sort of direction change. So yeah. How about you? What are you enjoying the sort of challenge?
I am, yeah. Like you say, I think similar kind of experience in that just focusing so intensively on one type of car that is, different to other cars I've driven in Sims in so many ways. I really enjoy the kind of handling characteristics of the car. I think it's quite one thing. Actually, one of my patrons was asking me to ask as a question, Sylvia Grossi, because she was saying about how in an electric car you don't have like the rolling resistance is quite different as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It took me a long time to get my head around the gears and when to use sort of engine braking, as it were, or regen, I guess it is in the cars. Certainly around like Monaco and things like that. The first race that we did, I really sort of didn't really understand what I was supposed to be doing with the gears, and it was only when I went back and looked at a bunch of replays, which is what I should have been doing during testing, and just saw how other people were using the car, I realised that I'd sort of made a bit of an error there. So
I'm glad it's not just me that's done that, because I think I just went into Monaco just like, just drive as fast as you can. I think, especially after or coming into last weekend, I've started trying to do things like that, like think, right, okay, look at other people, see how they're driving, look at their inputs, and try and use that to then improve my own
absolutely
stuff. But
it's now the most useful, probably the most productive bit of testing for me is the bit where I log in and there are people already doing laps, and I maybe go back out again and have a look at the replays, because there's nowhere to hide. It's like you get access to, if not all the data, but at least some of the data from the very, very fastest people. The problem is you can look at these fast guys and you're like, I can't see exactly what they're doing, but I can see a lot of what they're doing. But then being able to actually replicate it yourself when you're on a lap is so difficult for me, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really good exercise for me in terms of just trying to develop that kind of consistency. And I mean this in the nicest possible way, but those guys, they're like robots. They're just like doom, 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 doom. Because I mean, I was trying to get my times down at Monaco this week, and I just really want people to, if anyone watching this who's not really done sim racing, or certainly anything of, this kind of level where you're really trying to extract like the absolute fastest time, is when you're trying to get that consistent, any little, and even the tiniest thing on a lap, you can drive 2 laps that to all intents and purposes feel and look identical. But the time can be like a second.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Yeah,
or more even.
Certainly that electric docks track, if you fluffed that right hander going into the fast back section, the time just bleeds away, and it's not like it looks quick and it feels quick, but you're just ticking away, and you get the, obviously when you're testing, you get the sort of difference, your delta time at the top. And that's it. I feel like I've spent the last 3 weeks just staring at delta times, either going up or down. But then you'll have a lap. Yeah, exactly. But then you'll have a lap, and all of a sudden you're half a second quicker, and then you're like, "Well, brilliant. Can I do that again? Who knows?"
I had it last night. So all week I've been trying to break into the 53s at Monaco, and initially I thought, well, okay, I've done a lot of driving, driven on some different tracks, so I understand the dynamics of the car now and everything else. Thought, I'll go on Monaco and I'll just, it shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah.
And it's taken me, I did it last night.
Nice.
But I was getting like low 54s consistently. And then I did, and then suddenly I did a 53.7, and then the next lap was a 53.5. And now I just can't seemingly.
Yeah.
Everything else after it was 54s. I was just like,
that was the encouraging development for me last week, was that I was more consistent, I think. So once I got into the sort of 26s, I was able to kind of post laps in the 26s fairly reliably. And then when I dropped down to like just into the 25s, I was able to do that a few times as well. And if I was losing time, because it's easy to fixate on the delta, but if you get into the 25s and you set a 25, then you're looking at your delta like, oh my god, I'm a half a second down, but you're still like in the 26s, which is still like a good lap for you. So I really felt like it's starting to click in the same way that real testing in real racing does, where you sort of unlock stuff, unlocks, I guess, speed, and then are able to sort of mostly like replicate that. And that was something I was definitely missing in the early weeks. Was I was just my consistency was all over the place. I'm not suggesting I'm like at that robot level of consistency, but my consistency has improved over the course of the time. And I think that's just partly A, getting more familiar with the car, and B, this is the most sim racing I've done in the last 10 years, probably the most intensive. Really? It's fun. It's like it's a hobby for me, but I've got so much stuff going on with the job and other stuff, outside of work, that I really think that like this is, in a weird way, this is the most focused I've been on sim racing in a long time. And I think the learning curve is steep, but also my rate of progress is actually is much steeper than it would necessarily appear based on the results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think as well, it's easy to look at the results, and it's not really. There's so much that happens in a race, because actually that's something I wanted to come to. Is obviously you raced in Ginettas in GRDC.
Yeah.
And I think, was that 2018 you did that?
Yeah, we were in the paddock at the same time. Yeah, I was. Yeah. I was there at Silverstone when you were dishing out the pride flags for the car, and I meant to go and get one. But that was like, if you've watched the series, Silverstone was where I just had all these mechanical issues and stuff, and the car was just in in bits for most of the weekend and stuff. So I just I never had time in the end. But I did intend to come over and grab one and stick it on the car. But yeah, you were in the GT5 paddock, right? And I was in GRDC. So we were the kindergarten, and you guys were all in the proper stuff.
Oh, well, it sounds. I had my own mechanical woes that weekend as well. So it's funny. I had a race that was a little bit like Saturday, because we had a brake problem,
right?
And but we didn't find it out until the weekend before. So I actually had a lot, like basically all my brake bias was to the rear.
Oh
and
no!
Spinning, and I was like, why is this happening? So I kind of spent a lot of the race driving around on my own. But
mine was a relay. Mine was like a £3 part or something that kept going wrong, and I don't think they quite got the right relay or whatever. And so I'd go over a curb, and it would like shake the relay loose, and then all the power would cut out, and the engine compression would go like through the roof and stuff.
Oh my God.
It was an absolute nightmare. So yeah, I can forget about Silverstone. I think the other thing, and I will say this, that weekend, I think, and it's sort of what I was. I think I've sort of approached Monaco the same way, maybe, is that I kind of know the circuit, and I felt like I knew Silverstone from so many sort of racing games and just watching the Grand Prix and things like that. So I probably did the least training for the Silverstone round of GRDC out of all of them. I was sort of focused on Snetterton because it was a circuit that I did not know at all. So I was playing that in iRacing. I was, playing that in Project Cars 2 and things like that, just to try and get my head around that circuit. And then 2 weeks later, we ended up at Silverstone. And it turns out that actually, although I know which way the corners go, I didn't know it in anywhere near the level of detail I needed to make up for the fact that my testing was severely curtailed by the technical issues. So yeah, it was. Silverstone was a bad weekend, but then I bounced back at Brands.
You came 7th at Brands, did you? Or you were nearly 7th?
I was running 7th and I ended up 8th. But yeah, I had 2 8th places, which matched my sort of best results of the season. So that was a really nice way to top off the year. And then I didn't race in 2019, unfortunately. It's really expensive, and I think probably I could have probably found some sponsorship, but it would have required a sort of almost a second job. I think that's the thing about race driving and finding sponsorship is it is basically a job. It's like you've got to create sponsorship decks, you've got to have meetings, you've got to have calls, you've got to really chase this money. And I was sort of like so focused on all the other stuff going on in my life at the time, I just wasn't able to put it together. But I think for me, again, this sort of focus on sim racing has kind of reminded me that actually I really need to do something about getting racing again. I still own the car, so that still
Oh, that's
exists.
good.
Yeah. So yeah, the car's up at my mum's place actually in a garage, so it's waiting for me whenever I'm ready. But yeah, it's difficult. I do feel like sim racing. The thing about sim racing is I sort of went real racing and expected it to kind of like completely ruin sim racing for me. Like I'd never want to do it again because it wouldn't be able to match the sort of thrill of really being there. But I think what it gave me an appreciation for was how good sims have gotten and how close they've gotten to the real experience. Obviously, it's still better to be in the car and feeling that sort of sensation of speed. And you know, much as I love sim racing, like I feel an overtake on track against a person on a circuit in a real car is more meaningful, I suppose, than an overtake in a sim race. But I think it really did give me an appreciation for how great sim racing is and how much it can kind of scratch that itch. So even since the racing, I've still regularly, well, not as regularly as I'd like, but I still regularly jump on project cars with a bunch of the guys I raced against in that first year, and we just have like knockabout fun, races on little private servers in the G40 because it's like it's where we all came from and it's really good fun. So
Yeah, I remember doing quite a bit of practice on project cars in the G40 in that
mm.
season. It's pretty cool.
It's just fun seeing your own car in there. Do you know what I mean? Like your
Yeah.
own model of car. In the game. So yeah, it's fun and it helped me learn Snetterton. I had a really good weekend at Snetterton as well. Like I said, because I focused all my sort of practice on that rather than Silverstone. I love Snetterton now. It's such a brilliant circuit.
Track I've never driven. I've driven it on Sims,
Mm.
and I nearly did a race there at one point, but it didn't happen. For
It's got a really
for
nice flow
reasons.
to it. I really like the rhythm of it and stuff. And yeah, the sort of section at the end of the straight, which is like a left, right, and then into bomb hole, which is basically flat.
Yeah,
Is flat. Is really really exciting.
yeah, definitely. They're good fun cars. These Ginettas when they're
Mm.
yeah, I remember driving at Thruxton. That was one of my favourite rounds because it's just so
Terrifying.
fast, and the whole car is just like you're just kind of hanging on to it, trying to keep it
Yeah.
pinned. And I guess Snetterton must have like through Bombhole must feel a lot like that.
Bombhole's not too bad because it's got a bit of camber to it, so it's got a bit of compression. But the I think the track that comes on, it's the corner that comes onto the straight. That's like quite fast, and that's the one where I actually had a spin there during one of the races. But that was yeah, the race where I sort of spun. I then managed to get it turned around and chased down the guys who'd passed me, and we crossed the line like side by side. It was super super exciting. But that's probably the fastest I've ever driven. I think I was basically doing like quali laps in the race. To try and catch up. But yeah, it's a great circuit. If you get a chance to race there, it's really really good.
How do you find it? Because I find this is quite interesting. So, in terms of when we're doing the Formula E race at
Mm.
home rounds, do you find that then you get very nervous, or especially before qualifying? And in terms of how you compare that to how you feel when you're driving in Ginetta, like do you get much nerves before a big online race?
Yeah, I do. I think I feel like it seems totally counterintuitive, but I feel like I'm almost more
No,
nervous.
I feel that too. I'm glad
It's
that's
really
what you
weird.
think. Yeah.
I know
Okay.
there's a huge audience watching the sort of Formula E stuff. Certainly more people than were ever watching or scrutinizing my racing, and the kind of addition of real commentators and things like that, and all the kind of surrounding stuff. Yeah, it really piles on the nerves. Also, it's a weird feeling to have race day nerves when you're sort of just sitting at home on your sofa. I think not having the distractions and the constant sort of, you just have to be there for the race, and then it sort of starts with no real ceremony and no real sort of, it just kicks off. It's a really weird situation. I definitely think some of my inconsistency and my accidents basically. I mean the one at Electric Docks was 100% my fault. I was following another car and I just didn't get my line through the chicane right, and I tore a wheel off.
I
Um,
did. I did exactly the same. I'm
yeah,
sure I did. I came in and I just didn't tuck in enough,
yeah.
and it was really stupid. Afterwards, I was like, "What did you expect to happen?"
Yeah,
You
my pre-race pep talk was like, just get through that chicane, and the rest of the lap you can manage quite easily. But yeah, I just stuffed it up chasing Simona de Silvestro, which was quite exciting because she's a great driver. So I think I just was focused on following her and not actually getting my line right, which was a shame. But at Hong Kong, I got taken out by one of the faster guys, Peo Pev.
Oh, okay.
I think he'd had an accident sort of turn one and turn two were a bit of a scrum, and I sort of managed to pick my way through those. And then I was just, lapping at my normal pace, but obviously Pev comes into a hairpin much faster than I do, and he just absolutely destroyed me, spun me around, and we both got sort of stuck together, and the entire field went past. And it was really gutting because I was on for, again, sort of like you managed to get away with electric dogs. I was on for like a reasonably good result, and then it just all, ended up eliminated first again. And obviously the commentary and the cameras aren't following me, so it just looks like I had a shocking start and then went out first time. But there were two very, very different incidents, I'm keen to point out.
I think this is one of the things, because initially coming into this I thought, oh great, I'm going to stream my races, and I'm quite new to streaming. I'd literally just got it set up on my console before this competition started. And for anyone who, basically what goes on behind the scenes, there's a lot of things happening in terms of like the camera that's on us, and then on Discord and everything, and it's just so many things to coordinate, plus, as you said, all your race day nerves as well. I found I performed a lot better in quali at the weekend compared to the first two rounds. I just fell apart.
I'm still bad at qualifying. I've always been bad at qualifying, just because
one lap as well, it's brutal, right?
One lap, the tires aren't ever quite where you want them to be at the start of the lap. So I think I just play it too safe in quali always. I'm always just desperate to try and just make sure I get through and don't totally bin the car. But that meant I qualified last at electric dogs, even though like we were sort of trading times, I think, all the way through practice. And I think if it had been an hour-long qualifying session, to be honest, I think I would have been slightly higher up from last. But that's what it is. What it is, one lap qualifying, it builds the pressure. It's good for the show, and that's what I've got to deal with. But it was the same in Ginettas. Like because it was our first season, my fixation was just getting those 3 laps in that were required to make sure you make the grid. And obviously, by the time I got those like 3 conservative laps in, my tires were sort of starting to go off on the Ginetta. So then I wasn't really in a position to put in a really, really fast lap. What would tend to happen would be then once we got into the race and the kind of, not the red mist, but the kind of that level of extra focus descended, I'd sometimes do faster laps in the race than I did in qualifying. So go figure.
I found that often, and when you're in the kind of pack as well, and you're really pushing, you do often find a little bit that perhaps that corner
that wasn't there before.
You come into it on your own, and you're a bit like,
But
I mean, in a race, you're just like, got it.
What I would say about the Ginetta stuff was, I spent a lot of my own money to go racing. So all my focus was just making the grid, and like what would tend to happen would be I'd qualify quite badly, but then in the race I'd make up spots. So like that Brands race, I've got a video of the opening minute of that Brands Hatch race 1. I'm like towards the back of the pack based on qualifying time, but I overtake 3 cars on lap 1. So it's like and that was what I was there for. I was there for fights and battles on track and overtakes and things. So all I cared about was making the grid for the races, and then I'd have my fun then. So I guess if I knew I was going racing more regularly than just one season, I might be a bit more cavalier about it. Also, if I knew I had budget to pay for repairs, because that's the other thing about the Ginettas is like I was one bad accident away from just not finishing the season. So it was all a bit by the skin of my teeth.
It gets a bit. It's not easy, is it, when you're racing in those kinds of circumstances? Because you've got one hand what you want to do, and by the other hand you're like, oh, if I want to race next weekend, and I want to race the weekend after that, and I don't want to sack. So it's tough going. But
it was quite liberating to get to race 2 at Brands and know that that was the final race of the season. I'm like, all right, I still wasn't going completely bonkers, and some other people were. There was a real end of term feel to some of the accidents that were going on, but I still had a really, really good result. But it was kind of liberating to get out there and be like, all right, final race of the season. If I end up in the gravel, it's not a big problem, So I was able to push it a little bit more.
It's good. That really came across. I was watching some of your videos back this morning, and it's really that really nice kind of feeling of when you're coming to the end of something like that, where sure, it's, you don't want it to end, but it's also you're kind of, your experience is built throughout the championship, and
of course,
met all those people, and it's that amazing feeling of, like you say, being in the race paddock, where it's for any petrol head, being in that kind of environment is it's Yeah,
And being one of the people that you like, I've been to a billion race meetings throughout my life, and to be one of the people who's walking around the paddock in a race suit, and one of the people who's going to be getting in a car and going to be going, like, I loved all of it. I loved every single element of going racing, down to like the slow down lap and waving at the marshals. Like, all of it's just like all the stuff that you've watched on TV. To be participating in it is really important. I think, talking about pressure, it definitely added pressure having a documentary crew filming me throughout the season as well. Because again, you get to brands, you're like, well, we need this series to end on a high. It would really suck if I like binned the car in practice and then,
have a big diva moment and be like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Throw the helmet through the back window, Carlos Sainz style. But yeah, so that was added pressure as well. I was like, well, I've got to make sure this is like an uplifting end to the series, because it had been an amazing experience and an amazing sort of uplifting experience throughout, even during the harder times. So, all pressure added. Part of me would like to go back to Ginetta racing with more budget, so more security in terms of repairs and things like that, and no crew. Even though it was lovely to have this document of my first racing season, which not many people get to have. It's this beautifully shot by Car Faction. They did an amazing job. But to go back without that kind of pressure of the cameras and things following me, and just race as I want to race, basically.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, because I mean it's a really wonderful way that it was captured, because that, like you say, that being your first ever season, for one, you've always got that as a memory that you can look back on. But I think for anyone out there who's hey, there's no shortage of people who must think, oh yeah, I wonder what it'd be like if I actually kind of just made it happen and went and raced. And you're really living that dream. People can live that vicariously through your experience on those videos. So it's quite an amazing thing to share.
I think, and this is going to sound slightly ridiculous, but like, one of the things I really wanted to get across as well was like, not someone who sucks at racing, but someone who's just like an armchair enthusiast, right? I never had like a karting career as a kid. I never did all that stuff, that racing drivers do. And there's a lot of documentary series about people who have innate talent or like some level of experience and then dropped off the kind of radar and come back to racing and things like that. But I really wanted to make a documentary about, just like, you're a motorsport fan, you watch it on TV every Sunday. What happens if you get in a car? Where would you shake out? What what would the learning curve be like, and things like that. So I really wanted it to be a kind of like every person kind of approach to racing, because I think that's what's sort of valuable, really, and different and interesting about that series. So yeah, if you've not seen it, people who are watching, check it out. It's on the Car Faction YouTube channel. I think it's called How to Be a Racing Driver or something like that. It's a really cool documentary. It's just really nice to watch.
I'll go back and put a link in the
that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Pop up over there.
Somewhere around there, yeah. I always forget where YouTube puts things these days.
You have to remember, because it's reversed as well. So it's,
mirrored.
It's there. It's over there.
Okay.
But and I think that's really true. I think it's fantastic watching things that are, like you say, people who are works drivers, and having that window into like the very kind of like upper end elite of competitive motorsport. But I think there's so much value to present a story of somebody that let's be honest, like the majority of people can associate with,
relate
your
to
journey through that. And I think something that's relatable has so much more, well, not always so much more, but just so much appeal. It's going to like reach so many people. So, and I guess that's one of the nice things about sim racing is that we're doing something that ultimately like anyone can get themselves a home sim really and start. And it's these guys who we're struggling to rub shoulders with, they've just dedicated so much time and energy and effort into what they're doing, which has got them to the top of their field, really.
Makes me wish I had more time to do it. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I obviously I've had some bad luck in the races and stuff, but the entire process of testing and chipping away at those times has been really satisfying. And trading times with you as well. It's like, it's really nice to have someone who's at a similar level of experience in terms of sim racing to be sort of battling with, and you're faster one day and then I'm faster another day and then you're faster, and it's just like, it's really nice it's really fun, just like that level of experience, and like you say, exchanging notes on Twitter DMs and things like that about where we're finding time and what's any tips and tricks. It's a really nice, friendly atmosphere, and I think that's going back to the Ginetta stuff. I think that's something that I really enjoyed about Ginetta was that level of openness between competitors. No one was like being a really hard-edged sort of competitor, like jealously guarding their secrets. It was a friendly kind of welcoming environment, and I felt that as well with the Formula E stay-at-home stuff on the Discord and stuff. Everyone's supportive and helpful and friendly, which is nice, because I think when you get to the upper echelons of the real sport, I think it gets a bit guarded, obviously. Because there's bigger budgets involved and results are more important and things like that. So it's been really fun.
Ginettas definitely had that balance. It's nice. Yeah, you feel like it's a good level and it's well put together, but it's also a friendly paddock to be in.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mike, I think I'm gonna bring us on to the quick fire questions.
Go for it. Yeah.
Together for you.
Sounds good.
Some of these are probably shorter answers than others, but but I'm gonna roll from the top. So, first question: do you have any pets?
I do not. I do not have pets. No, I'm allergic to cats, which is a shame because I really like cats. Yeah, but they make me sneeze horribly. So, I sort of tend to. When I visit people who have pets, I enjoy their pets, and then I hand them back. And I go and blow my nose and leave, basically.
Sounds like a good option.
Yeah.
What's your favourite car film?
Ooh, what is my favourite car film? Well, I've seen them all. I've seen all sorts of car films, including stuff like there's a Bollywood remake of Days of Thunder, which I've got on DVD. Like, I'm a real nerd for that stuff. Wow. Yeah. But I think probably just based on the amount of times I've watched it, probably Days of Thunder. It's just so over the top. It's basically like Top Gun with race cars. So probably that. I do love Le Mans as well, though. Obviously, big fan of sports car racing, and I love that it's just beautiful to look at. Basically, for a film where very, very little actually happens, I can sit there wrapped for sort of 2 hours watching Le Mans.
It's amazing how little dialogue there is in that film, and yet as a petrol head, you just get so drawn into it, right?
No one speaks for the first half an hour or so. But yeah, I think if you're looking for a weird, obscure Le Mans-based film, Michel Vaillant, based on the French comic book series, is incredible, and there is an English dub of it. But yeah, it was shot, I think, at the 2006 edition of the race, and they actually entered 2 cars to be like camera cars and to be the sort of character cars. So there are a couple of actual participants, I think it's 2006, in the race who were there just because they wanted to film them at the circuit. That's
so cool. One of the guys I raced with, Nicolas Schatz, who actually his helmet is Nicolas Schatz coaching is on my sticker visor on my helmet above me, and he has it painted on one of his helmets.
Nice.
It was him or sort of, anyway, someone I've raced with. Yeah.
The Michel Vaillant. Well, they sponsored Rebellion, didn't they, a couple of years ago?
They did.
So it was really cool for me as a sort of like, because you can get some of the comics in English as well. It was really fun to see those cars with those liveries, like sort of racing around at Le Mans and places like that. I really wanted they did some amazing like hats and merch and things like that. But yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. Right, more quick fire questions.
Yes.
Beach or mountains?
Ooh, I would say mountains. I like my skiing. I've not been skiing in ages, and you can get sunshine on the ski slopes as well. So best of both worlds. I don't like sand between my toes, so I'm going to go mountains.
Okay. Yeah, definitely mountains is the place for you, I think. If you could drive any car, and it can be a road car or a race car, what would it be?
Man, I feel like there should be separate answers for both.
You can have a separate answer for both.
Okay. Road car, I would say. I think the Ferrari Testarossa is probably the one that was like my sort of poster car when I was a little nipper, very little nipper.
I guess you're a child of the 80s, right?
Child of the 80s, yeah. So yeah, I'd like to drive one of those, or an F40, I suppose. Yeah.
What, in red, or would you go off piste with the colour a bit?
It's got to be red, hasn't it? I think probably for the motorsport heritage. I've got no interest in cars that don't have like motorsport heritage. I find it really strange. So like some of the sports cars that are amazing and amazing feats of engineering, they just leave me a bit cold if they haven't come from a brand that has some sort of competitive stuff. In terms of race car, probably an Aston Martin DBR9. Like that was when I really fell in love with GT racing and Le Mans. Was around the era of sort of 2004, 2005, where those cars were debuting, and they just looked amazing. They sound incredible, really, really cool. So yeah, one of those, please.
Okie doke. I'll put it on your Christmas list.
Thanks. Yeah, if you could have a word with Santa.
What was your favourite computer game as a child?
Gosh, I played so many. God, that's the reason I'm here, is because I played so many games. I think I loved Gran Turismo 2. Was probably, certainly when we're talking about racing games. Just lost so many hours to that, building up a car collection and things like that. And I still love the Gran Turismo series. Even though I work on an Xbox channel, I think in terms of console racing games, just love GT Sport at the moment. It's really, really good fun. I think the handling model is better than it's ever been, obviously, as you'd expect. And I love the sort of selection of tracks and the visuals. It just looks beautiful. So yeah, the Gran Turismo series has been with me for a long time.
Yeah, likewise. I never got to do any karting as a kid, so all my introduction to racing and driving cars was on the Gran Turismo series.
Yeah,
so.
100%. I think that's how. It's not how I got into motor racing. Motor racing's always been around, like on the TV on a Sunday and things like that. But I just think my love of racing and my love of racing games are kind of completely intertwined. And like I'd find racing series that I wanted to watch in real life based on cars that I'd driven in games, or I'd watch a race in real life and then discover that the car was featured in a game somewhere and go and seek that game out. So the two things have always been completely interconnected, and it's impossible to sort of separate them, I think, for me.
Definitely. Sweet or savoury?
Savoury. I'm not really a dessert person.
Really?
Yeah, there's the odd thing I have a weakness for.
Send all desserts this way.
Yeah, right. Like sticky toffee pudding, I think, is the one where I'm like, all right, okay, I will always order that if it's available on the menu. But by and large, I tend to just fill up on the savoury stuff, and then don't bother with dessert. Is that a sacrilegious thing to say?
No, I think that's absolutely acceptable answer.
Yeah.
No desserts were offended.
Okay.
This question. What was your first car?
Fiat Punto. It was my mum's Fiat Punto, which was
a yellow one.
No, it was silver with plastic bumpers. So if you were really posh, you had the one which had like the color coordinated bumpers. But it was the 75 rather than the 65, which meant it was a bit quicker. But it was a Mark 1 Punto. And I was at the Tokyo Motor Show in 2005, and I met Giorgetto Giugiaro, who's the guy who designed the Punto. Yeah, and I was like, I learnt to drive in a car you designed, and he said, "That's great, buy the new one." I was all right, mate. But yeah, so that was my first car, and then I had a big gap of not driving just because I was living in London. So, and then I a few years ago bought an Alpina D3, so it's like a 3 Series diesel because I was doing big mileage, but it handles beautifully. It's like a really beautifully set up 3 Series 2007 era, which I really like the shape of as well.
Is that estate or
sorry?
Saloon? Estate or saloon?
I didn't go for the estate. I wasn't quite ready for it. I do love a touring, but it's the saloon, yeah. And then recently I upgraded because I had an accident that was not my fault in that car. I was following behind a flatbed on the way back from Brands Hatch, as it happens, having watched some racing, and the back of the flatbed, the sort of thing where they keep the ramps, like flopped open, and the ramp went straight under the car and obliterated all 4 of the beautiful Alpina 20-spoke alloys. And the car was a write-off. So I have recently upgraded to a BMW 330e, which allows me to do all my local journeys on electric power only. So I'm doing my bit for the planet. So which is quite nice to be part of the Formula E stuff, because I'm already a convert to the sort of more environmental cause. I'd love an i8 actually. I'd love all that BMW technology and the seamlessness of the hybrid technology in the 330e. I'd love to be experiencing that in a car that's a bit quicker, obviously.
I had a go in an i8
Mm.
once, and it was really cool.
It looks
Good.
like an event.
Yeah, yeah.
Getting into it is an event. So
Anything with gull-wing doors, right?
yeah, indeed. So I love it, and that design has not aged at all. And they're cheap now. They're getting cheap.
Are
They're
they?
coming. They're starting to creep down to the sort of 30K mark. Obviously, like high mileage, but because
Yeah,
people do use them as like daily drivers because of the sort of hybrid stuff and the economy.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, they're starting to creep down. They're getting around the 30K mark, and if they depreciate much more, I'm having one.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it.
So it was a very long answer to a very short, quick fire question.
It's all right. I like an expansive
Yeah.
answer. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Where are we? Right. Okay. What's the most epic? Oh no, sorry. Childhood ambition. What was your first
Be a
childhood
racing
ambition?
driver, and
Really?
I sort and I did it, which is the amazing thing.
Wait,
Um,
smashed it.
I think after that first season at Ginettas, I had a sort of sense of satisfaction, like a buzz that lasted a good couple of weeks. And I've never really experienced that in the same way before. Like quite often when I achieve something, I'm already looking at the next thing I want to achieve. But I was able to actually take a couple of weeks after the season finished to think, yeah, you did a pretty good job of that, and you fulfilled an ambition you've had for decades. So yeah, it was really, really cool.
Good for you. I think it's always nice when you hear somebody's done something like that.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
took a lot of work to get it to happen. It spent a lot of money on it, but yeah, I did it.
Mine was fighter pilot, so I'm trying to get in a fighter plane at some point.
Wow,
So,
that'd be amazing.
Yeah, anyone that owns a fighter plane out there,
Yeah, I'm sure there's one parked outside somewhere. But yeah,
Top Gun, you see.
That's a level of speed I think I'm not quite ready for. I'll stick with my Ginetta, I think.
What's the most epic road trip you've ever done?
Wow. I loved Highway 1 in California. I know it's a cliche, but my wife and I drove up from Los Angeles to San Francisco and did the Pacific Coast Highway thing, and it's just great. We did it in a convertible Mustang. It was like really pleasant and nice, and the places you stop at on the way are cool and characterful. And we found like there's a sort of hidden away restaurant near Big Sur called the Penthes, I think, and it's like a really sort of concealed turnoff, but then it has the most amazing views out over Big Sur and the coast, and the food's great, and yeah, loved it. But if you're looking for something closer to home, the North Coast 500 is amazing as well. It's amazing that it's on our sort of little island, but if you head all the way up to Scotland and start at Inverness and do the kind of route all the way around the top of Scotland, some amazing kind of primordial scenery there as well, and the roads are incredible, and it's usually quite quiet, so recommend that.
That's really good. I'm going to write that down because
I can send you an article I wrote about it.
Could you? Yeah, because I really want to go and do some exploration up in the north of Scotland because it does look absolutely stunning.
Scotland's amazing. North Yorkshire's amazing as well. So yeah, well worth having a look at that.
Definitely. What's the worst job you've ever done?
I did a temp job. It wasn't so much the job itself that was bad, but I was every time I finished my university term, I'd just join a temping agency to get a bit of money over the summer. And I ended up stationed at an office, and they'd just moved offices from a place in the middle of the city to a place at a sort of office building at a sewage treatment works. And this is in the summer. So I'd arrive in the morning and it would smell pretty bad. And then I'd work all day in an air-conditioned office, and I'm like slowly desiccating because there's no open windows at all, because that would be the worst idea ever. So you're just in an air-conditioned box all day. And then you go outside and the sun's been beating down on all this sewage for like an entire 8 hours. And I'm just running to my car trying not to gag. So that was 4 weeks. The people there were lovely, don't get me wrong, but I felt so sorry for them because they were all extremely bitter about the fact that they've been removed from a nice office in the middle of town with like lovely sandwich places nearby and things like that to a literal SH1T hole. So
oh my God. I was going to say, when I asked you that question, I thought you either get asked this question a lot, or this job must have been horrific.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway, there was no deliberation. It was just like, well, this one time.
Everything else has been okay, to be honest, compared to that.
What's your automotive guilty pleasure? Do you have is there a car that you lust after that you're ashamed to admit?
Am I ashamed to admit? There's a there's a little like K car called a Honda Z600, which is like a 70s. I think they only ever did it in the UK in like bright orange, and they're very, very rare now. And they're
Uh-huh.
super underpowered and they're teeny weeny, but I just think they look really cool. They're sort of like a mini, but less common. And I bet they drive horribly, and I bet they're dreadful. But that's the one I'd like to track down. There's someone on Twitter who's got one, and I just sort of follow them just in case at any point they say, oh, it's up for sale. But you used to be able to get them for like, I remember reading about it in like some classic car magazine that a family friend gave me years ago when I was a kid. And at the time they were selling them for like 1,500 quid. And I'm like, well, that's an achievable amount of money.
So what can you buy for, what vehicle can you buy for?
Well, quite, yeah. Nothing these days. But I would say, again, not really guilty, but I am more into the kind of electric car, hybrid supercar stuff than maybe your average petrol head. But I don't see it as a problem as long as I can still go racing. Like I don't mind what the cars are powered by, and I do feel a sense of responsibility to our planet and things like that. So yeah, I guess the i8 counts as well, sort of.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's nothing to be guilty of, though, is it?
No, I don't think so. No, but certainly there are petrol head people and racers who don't want to recognise that we do need to make some changes. I think in the fairly
Yeah.
near future about
Yeah.
how we consume fossil fuels.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Definitely. What's your favourite track? And we can have track you raced on and virtual track, or just like could be any track.
Favorite track I've raced on is Brands GP. It's just beautiful. It's got some amazing corners. It's very, very cool. The back section, to have the privilege to be able to race on that is, there's not many days where they do racing at the GP circuit because of the housing nearby. So to be able to do that and to support the British GT Championship was incredible. It's like the coolest country road you've ever seen out the back of Brands. So that would be my one that I've driven on. Real life, I love the Nordschleife to go and spectate. I've been to the Nürburgring 24 Hours a couple of times, and it's just wicked. And honourable mention to Spa as well. Spa's great.
Yeah, Spa is pretty awesome. Actually, and the Nürburgring, Nordschleife, definitely. I'm doing the 24 Hours this year.
Amazing. When it happens.
When it happens.
It'll be in October and it'll be snowed off. When I went, it was in May, and it was the year when the hailstones came down. It was beautiful sun for the race start. Within an hour, it was the biggest hailstorm I've ever seen in my life. So,
well, this year it's scheduled for September, so actually we might get.
Yeah, good.
Well, who knows? Who knows? Anything could. It's the Nürburgring.
Fingers crossed. I mean, I'll try and make it out to spectate if it all happens and stuff, because it's such an awesome event.
Yeah, awesome. I'll drop you an invite.
Yeah, cool. That's good.
What's a surprising fact that nobody knows about you?
Oh, there's loads. There's loads of them. I did one of these like a while back on Twitter where it was like 5 things people don't know about me. So let me pick one at random. I had a couple of auditions for a role in the second Harry Potter film as the bad guy.
Really?
Yeah, I've still got a couple of pages of the script in a drawer somewhere as well. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
I did the second audition. I did a bad job of it, so I didn't deserve to get it, but it's still kind of cool, I guess. Yeah. I'm not like a professional actor. I was never really, I just wrote a letter to the casting director and said I think I'd be quite good at this.
Just winged it.
Here's a photo, and they were like, "Yeah, come on down."
I love that. Well, fortune favours the brave, isn't it? If you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to get the opportunity.
Exactly.
Power to you. I love it. If you could have a superhero power, what would it be?
To fly, obviously. I think it's the best one. I've I made this sweeping generalization in a video the other day that anyone who chooses invisibility is just a bit creepy. Like, what are the uses of invisibility other than just like creeping on people or like stealing money from a bank? So yeah, I think flying is the one for me.
Okay, I like your ethical choice of with great power comes great responsibility.
Quite, yeah.
What's your favourite cheese?
Emmental. I like the Swiss cheese. Okay.
Good choice. And final question: do you want it to rain at Monaco this weekend?
No, no, not only because I've not done enough practice anyway. I think I don't know if my level of car control is so good that I'd be able to. I think given that consistency has been a problem, I think consistency in the wet would be a big struggle. So I'm gonna. There's already enough chaos. Like, it's not like I'm wanting for chaos to try and pick.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
I think if it stays dry, that'll be good.
Yeah, I agree. I might try and get a couple of wet laps in just in case.
Just in case they roll the dice.
Just...
it'd be such a mean trick, wouldn't it?
Yeah. After they said it won't rain.
Well, I love all the hardcore sim races are like, I've put 1,000 hours into R Factor 2 and I've never done a wet lap, and you're like, well, okay.
Yeah, if that hopefully tells you we're safe.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah.
Well, Mike, I'm going to wrap this up because we're coming up to an hour. But,
wow.
It's been, the time's flown by. It's an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I think the first of what actually is going to become a regular thing on my channel as well. Nice. So it's been it's been a pleasure, and I want to wish you good luck this weekend. I hope we can have a proper battle out there. And
same to you, definitely. Yeah, I'll see you on the practice servers tonight, no doubt. So
for sure.
Cool.
Well, good luck, and see you out there.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.